I've been in the field now for 40 years or something. I'm never satisfied with my report. I'm always tweaking my report. You're looking to make it better, make it more user-friendly, but I've always found it difficult to read a report that's linear because when I'm reading something like, I get to the section of the BASC, and the BASC has a couple scales related to attention and hyperactivity. Well, I see that those may be elevated. So I guess in the narrative, you have to say, as mentioned in the background information, the child has ADHD symptomatology, or as mentioned in the NEPSI, where I gave the auditory attention response set, the child did poorly. What I try and do is I try and take everything and write a report following the underlying neurocognitive constructs.
Welcome to another episode of the Prepared School Psych podcast. Today, I'm pleased to have Dr. Dan Miller as my guest. Dr. Miller is a partner in Report Insights, LLC, a new company which sells the Psych Writer Pro virtual report writing assistant software. He is the past director of the Kids Inc. School Neuropsychology Postgraduate Certification Program. He also works part-time as the executive director of the Woodcock Institute for Neurocognitive Research and Applied Practice at Texas Women's University. He has written numerous journal articles, chapters, and books, including The Essentials of School Neuropsychology, Best Practices in School Neuropsychology, and Evidence-Based Selective Assessment for Academic Disorders. To the benefit of many children, adolescents, young adults, and practitioners who serve them, Dr. Miller's dedication and contributions have undoubtedly left an indelible mark on the field of school neuropsychology. I am very honored to have you here, Dr. Miller. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Well, you had been the longstanding head of the School Neuropsych Postgraduate Certification Program and now the past director. What are you doing with your extra time? Do you actually have time to watch TV? Because I usually ask all my guests what their favorite TV shows are that they're watching right now.
My brother introduced me to Astrid. I don't know if you heard of that or not. It's on PBS. It's a story of an autistic woman who works in a record department for a police department. And then she starts assisting the police chief with investigations. But how they portray autism in adults is just absolutely perfect. It is a really good show. So there's 3 seasons. I just finished season 1 last night. But you have to know that it's all in subtitles. So
Oh, okay.
you really have to sit there and pay attention and read all the subtitles.
It's not the show to have in the background while you're looking at your phone.
No, no. Yes.
Well, what are you doing with your extra time now that you're stepped down from something that I know I got the pleasure to be a part of as what we just mentioned, 2007, I got my postgraduate certificate. What are you doing with your extra time right now?
I'm trying to downsize. I am thinking about, my wife says I'll never retire, and I probably never will because I enjoy everything that I do. Work is not work when you enjoy what you do. And that's, as long as I am able, I will continue to write books. I will continue to do things to advance the field. But the day-to-day operations of the School Neuropsych Postgraduate Certification Program, I was ready to transition and let my colleagues take that over. And Julie Getman and Chris Bedford did that as of the start of this year. So that's freed up some time. I'm officially going to retire from being the executive director of the Woodcock Institute at TWU next August. After 35 years at TWU, I think it's time to try something new. So that'll be a nice transition. So the only thing left standing is really going to be the Psych Writer. That's really what I put my efforts in. And I'm really excited about it because it's a platform that you could do just anything you can imagine with. As technology evolves, it's really going to be kind of fun to, work on all of that. So that's going to keep me cognitively active. That's what I'll be doing.
Well, when did you decide that that was going to be the next step, that you want to have this report writing program, not just for yourself, but to share with other people?
It's been a lifelong dream. I say lifelong, probably about at least 20 years. I've wanted to, develop some type of software program that would be an assistant. The technology was just not quite there, or the programmers that I tried to work with were just not there. So I think what happened is in the training program and teaching, at the university, a school neuropsych minor, I developed like a word processing file, and it was a report shell that people used. I looked up this morning in 2010, the report shell was 45 pages long and it had 37 tests in it. As of today, the report shell is 217 pages long and has 137 tests in it. So as I took more and more tests and classified them according to the integrated school neuropsych CHC model, it got really, really cumbersome. So students had to, like they gave the NEPSI, they have to search through 100, 200 pages and find out where they plugged data in. And it just was not very efficient in terms of their time. Well, now the software does all that for you automatically. So from a time saving standpoint and an efficiency and then the reducing errors, it's phenomenal. But I had to find the right programmer who was willing to enter into this journey with me. And I've got an amazing colleague that I work with that is been real easy to work with and very excited about the project. So,
Well, tell me more about this great tool, the Psych Writer Pro. How is it different from some of the other report writing tools that exist right?
well, we're pretty much leading the industry in terms of the number of tests that have been classified. I think that I went to NAS last year and I exhibited and I walked around and saw all the other vendors that were offering, report writing software programs. Some of them, one of the things, probably the main things that's different, is a lot of them has the word AI in their title of their company. I am real leery of that. I mean, when you really delve into what they're doing, they're having people write something and then they're using the AI technology to wordsmith and change things for them. When I'm writing a report, I don't want my words to be changed. I don't want to be sitting in a due process hearing and an attorney say, well, tell me why you decided to phrase something that way. And it's like, well, that's not really my phraseology. That's really AI that did that. That's something that's different. We do not do that. I mean, I think that as AI increases in utility and stuff, I wouldn't mind having things like some interpretive types of interpretive things to help people, like Dan in a can. I hate to use that expression, but have something like, you have a set of data and there may be a real logical explanation as to why that data may be that way or a generated hypotheses. It'd be nice to offer the clinician that hypotheses, but they still have to write their own interpretation. Some other vendors have done things where they've taken test protocols or printouts from like the BASC, and they've allowed you to scan that directly into their software program. That makes me really leery. It sounds good in theory, but every time the publisher changes something, which they do all the time with versions, you'd constantly be updating, all of that information. Plus, some of the stuff that you get from like a WJ printout or a BASC printout or whatever, it's really not something that you want to share. I mean, some of that stuff is like all the contrast scores and things that are just drilled down to such minute detail. You're not going to be putting that into a report. You're going to be using it as a clinician. So we still do require people to enter data, take the data from a printout or a protocol, put it into the software program, but it's very seamless. We've got error checking things in there. So if you type a score that's, out of a range, it's going to scream at you and say, nope, you can't do that. We've added things like confidence intervals, which I did not have in the paper pencil report shell, which I've always wanted to do. There's just a variety of things that are different, basically. We've tried to make it as user friendly as possible. The interface is very seamless. It's clean. So, I mean, those are basically the main differences between our product and other products that are out there.
Now, I know I've played around with the program a little bit, and obviously, from the standpoint of entering scores, we're putting those in on a test by test basis. But knowing your report shell, you gave the example of the NEPSI, right? Like the NEPSI subtests are going to go all over the report. So, another part of your report writing software program is that it's built into the school neuropsychology kind of framework instead of a test by test kind of framework. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, when you and I and all of us were in graduate school, we learned to write reports in a very linear fashion. We typically took a course in like cognitive assessment, and they taught you how to write up the cognitive assessment section.
Mhm.
Took a course, maybe an academic assessment, you'd learn to write up the academic assessment piece. Then you took a course in social emotional assessment. The thing that is really been frustrating, and by the way, I've been in the field now for 40 years or something. I'm never satisfied with my report. I'm always tweaking my report. I think you're looking to make it better, make it more user friendly. But I've always found it difficult to read a report that's linear because when I'm reading something like, I get to the section of the BAS, and the BAS has a couple scales related to attention and hyperactivity. Well, I see that those may be elevated. So I guess in the narrative, you have to say, as mentioned in the background information, the child has ADHD symptomatology, or as mentioned in the NEPSI, where I gave the auditory attention response set, the child did poorly. What I try and do is I try and take everything and write a report following the underlying neurocognitive constructs. So when I'm dealing with the area of attention, I'm going to be talking about, what the concerns were from the parents and teachers in that area. I'm going to talk about what actual assessments I gave in that area to flesh that out and to, test their, validate their concerns. And then I'm also going to pull in the scales from the rating scales that relate to attention and talk about that all at the same time. So that's based on a model that we've created. I wrote the first book in 2007, The Essentials of Neuropsych Assessment. We're now in the third edition, and believe it or not, we're talking about the fourth edition because, well, the WACE is coming out, the new WACE. You're going to have the new WJ coming out. Not too far, in probably another year and a half, you'll have another version of the WIS coming out. So anytime those major tests come out, we have to update the Essentials book. So that'll be on our next project, right? I've got several writing projects I'm dealing with right now, but that's probably the third on the list. So yes, the theory has evolved to the point that there was a need to operationalize the theory using software, and that's what the software does for you.
That's incredible. You talked about the new tests coming out, and of course, having a software program that includes all of the different tests that we have access to. What is the kind of the turnaround time for the new waste coming out for the report rating software program to get updated?
I've already started working on the WACE 5, I think is what it is. I keep track of the numbers, but I've already worked on everything. I just need to know some of the contrast scores and things that are there. They've got some supplemental indices that they've developed. I already know what most of those are, but as soon as it comes out, I think it's in September, it'll be integrated into the Psych Writer Pro. It'll be almost the same week. And then the same thing with the WJ5. I think that'll be coming out in either late of this year or in January or February. I know they want it ready for NASP of 2025. So,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, I think the last workshop I listened to, they said hopefully February was the last thing I heard from Riverside. So fingers
which
crossed.
is the NASP conference. Yes. Yeah.
So it sounds like, one of the cool things is you are obviously not in with, but you have a lot of that information before these tests are even released so that it sounds like the day the WACE 5 is available, you'll be able to almost press the button and people have like immediate updated information within this report writing program.
The whole thing that's so cool about an online type of application is that any changes you make are instantaneous.
Mhm.
So it's not like you have to download version 3.2 or something, for new features. So we add tests all the time. I mean, this past week we added probably 3 or 4 tests. And it's usually dependent upon, somebody's out there as a practitioner and they say, I really use this test in my practice and I see that it's not in there. Would you mind adding it? The turnaround time is anywhere from a week to maybe a month, depending upon what we have in the queue and how complicated the test is, quite frankly. We've added things like the Milan and the MMPI. Those were really, really complicated tests. The PAI, the list goes on and on. But the bread and butter tests that most school psych practitioners used are all in there. We are really moving in the direction of adding some tests that adults use. So not only for children, but now tests that are geared for adult neuropsych assessment as well.
That's incredible. So it sounds like you are getting feedback from the people who are using it in regards to, I use this test. Can you add that in there? What other kind of feedback have you received from the school psychs and school neuropsychs who have been using the software?
Oh, people have loved it because it saves them so much time. There's a feature in the program that is the best selling feature. It's called templates. And what templates are is that when you get to every table, there's a section where you can write narrative explaining it underneath there. Well, we all have boilerplate language that we've used over the years that we can interpret certain things like sensory motor functions. What you do is you create a template, and then there's a pull down menu so that if there are no sensory motor concerns based upon the child's performance, you choose a name of a template that says no concerns, and it writes the narratives that you've already established. So it speeds up the report writing tremendously. We've had a private practitioner has a large private practice, and she had like 200 cases. And what she did is she has access to practicum students and interns. She went back and added all those cases into the report writer and created templates so that now the new cases that she has all this access to that boilerplated language that she already uses on a regular basis. So that really makes things a lot easier. We've added checklists to the narratives. Like if you're going to talk about educational history, you can say the child's currently receiving IDEA services. Well, what classification? What special education services are they receiving? What related services are they receiving? And with clicks of buttons on a checklist, and when you're done, it writes that narrative for you and plops it right into the program. There's another feature I'm very proud of. I've always wanted to do this and could not implement this until the program was established. We created a checklist called the Neuropsychological Processing Concerns Checklist. You had access to version 1.
Wow.
Yes. Well, version 4 is now only available in the software. It's integrated into the Psych Writer. And what is so cool about this is that you add it as a test. Then you basically establish an external rater where you send an email to a parent or a guardian or a teacher with a hot link. They go immediately to fill out the form online, and then it automatically dumps all the results into the report writer. You do not have to transfer all that data by hand into the Psych Writer. We've also tweaked some of the items to make it a little easier to understand, and we've added a social emotional section at the end. So we really enhanced that form. And then you and I have always dealt with this. We've all dealt with this. What do you do when someone sends a BASC back or a Connors or an Achenbach and they don't answer all the questions? Do you send it back to them again? What do you have to do? Well, the way we've got this structured, you can have to answer every single question. You can say not observed, but you're going to get the thing back. It's going to improve the validity of the instrument, and it's really going to make it much more easier to use the results. My fantasy with this is I hope that people use it as a way of establishing what the referral concerns are from teachers and parents. So it's going to help with case conceptualization. It's also going to help when you're walking out the door to figure out, now, what battery do I have to assemble to answer those referral concerns? So some things we're going to tweak in the future, some exciting features I'm going to be implementing down the road. That'll make that even easier, like an assessment planner. But that's one of the features of the program I'm very excited about. I wish I could do the same with the BASC and the reading scales, but they make their money by selling protocols. I can't take their copywritten information and do that. So
Right.
But I like that feature. I'm trying to think what else I could share. We're HIPAA compliant, spent a lot of time making sure that the program was HIPAA compliant. You can export things as many times as you want, either into a Word format or a PDF format. The only thing about Word is it needs to be a full version of Word. You can't use like Google Word or something because they really screw up the format. They're not a full version. You have customized report headings. You can change the name of the report. You can change the disclaimer. You can change the color scheme. If you have a referral and you know the child has no sensory motor concerns whatsoever, you just turn that section off. You can turn on and off any of the sections of the report to streamline the evaluation. The other thing I like is the professor in me still comes out, the trainer, if you will. We have a full report option where you have basically every section with a table and a narrative. What I like is we have an option called the narratives all concatenated in the front, like an executive summary, and putting all the tables in the back. I think that's a nice feature. As you grow and get used to the program, that's a nice way to print things out. If I'm a supervisor or a practicum and intern student, I have the capability of having them send me the narratives only to make sure that they're doing things appropriately, or the tables only. So you can actually, like in supervision, okay, go out and give the NPCC. Let's meet and talk about case conceptualization. Okay, now you've given the WJ cog. Let's meet and see how the data is all tabled and talk about how to interpret that. So you can walk them through the model as you're training them. And we use the report writing program in the school neuropsych postgraduate certification program as well. This was the first year last year that we used it, and we got really positive feedback. The feedback from the year before students was, why did we have it the year before? It really would have saved them a lot of time. So, yeah.
Well, you answered a couple of the questions I had in regards to, because it's not a program that just lives on my computer, right? It is an online program. And so, a lot of school districts will ask, like, where is this data being hosted? So you already mentioned the HIPAA compliance. What other kind of things would a school psychologist want to know before walking into and maybe trying to get their director to pay for this?
Um, Things are kept on a server, but it's a secure server, and everything is the only person that really has access to the data is the psychologist themselves. We as developers, we can't touch it. That's the main thing. You can do a site license for yourself, or what you can do is a district can buy, multiple site license and have everybody sharing one site license. Here's the advantage and here's the disadvantage. The advantage is that you got a group of colleagues of 5 school psychologists in your district. They're all going to create their best templates and put them into the software. But those best templates can be shared with all 5 people that are sharing the site license. So it really improves the quality of report writing for everybody. Now, but the downside is they're going to have access to everybody's cases. So if that's something that the district doesn't want to do, they can get individual site licenses for each one.
Mm-hmm.
The thing they could do, let's say you're in a private practice, you're an LAP, and you have like an administrative assistant there, you can actually add them to your site license. So what they can do, they can go ahead and plug in BASC scores for you. They can take the protocols and enter the data for you. So when you're sitting down, you're really responsible for writing the narrative, not doing all the legwork behind things. So those are the features we offer. We tried to make the pricing as affordable as possible. It's $50 a month for unlimited use. And what I mean by that is I like to see things, the report as it's unfolding. I may put in background information and print out a PDF or a Word file just to see the layout of what it looks like. And then I'll go ahead and put in, the IQ and achievement stuff and print a copy out to see what it looks like. All of that there's no extra cost because you can do it as many times as you want. It's cheaper to pay an annual fee because you get 2 months free. It's $500 instead of $600, but people can do it either monthly or an annual fee. And again, updates are instantaneous. We've got a place on the website that kind of keeps track of every feature that we add. It's like a log to kind of keep telling people what we've added and what new tests are available. So it's pretty cool. I'm very excited by it.
Now, some school districts that I work with in my role, their school district has a very specific template that they're supposed to follow. So, how does your program integrate with those requirements at the district level?
Not well at this point. But that is something we're well aware of. That's something we're hearing from our users. What we would like to do is give them the capability of reorganizing the data in a format that'd be what their district uses. Now, the downside of that, it's got to be incredibly flexible because every district has their own way of doing things. But I have to tell you, the districts that have started using this, they like it. They like the way that the report is laid out. They like the structure. They like the, separating things into the neurocognitive areas. So even though they have their own model, they're really liking this model. And that's what I really would like for them to be able to have. I've created it already. I just have to get it into the queue with my programmer to do. I've taken the entire 217-page report shell with 137 tests. I've reclassified all of them according to CHC narrow and broad abilities. And I would like to have the functionality that with a click of a button, you could say, I want to look at the data when I'm writing it up. I want to look at it from an integrated school neuropsych perspective, or with a click of a button, rearrange everything and look at it from purely a CHC perspective. I think that, giving the user the option to look at things through different lenses is good. I'm kicking and screaming. The programmer wants to go and add the feature of a linear type of model because that's what people were trained to do. My hope is if we ever did that, they would put data in a linear fashion, say, here's the WISC-5 data. But then I would hope that with a click of a button, they could say, but how would that look like from a neurocognitive perspective? I'm trying to advance the field forward by giving them a comprehensive neuropsychological framework to look at their data.
That's incredible. I know for myself, once you start thinking about your tools in that way, it's hard to go back.
Yes.
I happened to work in a school district when I did the program that was very flexible with our reports. And, everyone kind of wrote their reports in their own way, but we had to have our, very specific wording for the district. And then I ended up, when I went into private practice, I was contracting with a private school. And we all needed to write our reports in the same way. And they were writing them test by test. And I, in my mind, had to go back to that way.
Right.
And it hurt me inside to write a report that way because I couldn't see all my memory data all in one table. So I will say I wrote one report that way. And then I convinced the entire team to just come on over to my side and let's write it in this other way. Because again, once you start thinking about your results in that way, why would I ever go back to, let me tell you about the WISC? No, let me tell you about the CTOP. Can I just tell you all about all the memory I learned about your kiddos?
When I'm writing a report and I have an integrative style in front of me, what I used to do, to me, it's the analogy is like juggling balls in an air, because I'd come across something on the intelligence test. I would generate a hypothesis about what I would expect to find in an area of learning and memory. And then I would have the learning and memory stuff down here, and I'd have to remember what I saw up here and it related to what I saw down there and what the parents and teachers are telling me. Well, now all of that is integrated together. It just makes it so much more user friendly when you're trying to interpret cross battery type of data. And neuropsych evaluations, this is used mainly for neuropsych evaluations, but people are using it for traditional psychoeducational evaluations as well. They're using it for kids, they're using it for adults. It's a framework, an interpretive framework that hopefully will help people.
Well, I know one of the things I've been sharing a lot, I get to talk about report writing with a lot of different groups. And one of the things I have found is that while everyone does a great, assessment where we're getting those multiple sources of data, that a lot of times when we get to the summary, because all we just talked about was test results, our summary is about the test and not oh, by the way, that's what also the parent said. And this aligns with what the teacher said. So I like having everything right there as just a visual reminder. Don't forget to include that all of this information aligns.
One of the features that I'm also very proud of that was in the paper and pencil version is that every single test in a table has a definition of what it's designed to measure. And the reason I do that is when you're writing narrative down below, I think it's real easy for non-seasoned practitioners to talk about the test and what it's designed to measure, as opposed to how the child interacted with those testing materials. What was difficult? What was easy? What strategies did they use? And then what I always say under every table, so what? What are the educational implications for the child's performance in that particular neurocognitive area? So that's where I think the report writer helps as well. I've actually given people the option they can turn off those subtest descriptions. And it's like, I don't know why anybody would want to do that.
Yeah.
They can turn off confidence intervals. I'm not sure why anybody would want to do that. They can turn off a variety of things, qualitative behaviors, but we are all hung up on test scores very frequently. And there's so much information you can get on qualitative information. And many of the publishers, like, from the Pearson on the NEPSI or the DCAS or other things, the cognitive assessment system, they've quantified the qualitative behaviors so you can get base rates. What is the percentage of ADHD kids that engaged in asking for repetitions? So all of that's integrated into the report shell, and that enhances the overall quality of the interpretation, what's going on with the child. So you should be talking about strengths and weaknesses and what are the educational ramifications of the data, not just talking about what the test was designed to measure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the other things that I'm thinking about too is the fact that all of our states don't have the same IDA criteria, exactly the same. So when you are looking at the end of the report template, when, private practice, I might be looking at DSM as, my school psych had. I might be looking at, IDA classifications, but I practice in California. So we have slightly different terminology, of course. How was all of that taken into consideration?
You can enter things in based on the checklist, but then everything is editable. I just had a demo I did with somebody from Canada, and she told me that not only do they not follow IDA, which I knew, but that every province has their own definitions of handicapping things. So I'm working with a programmer right now to develop something where they can use templates where they can say, these are the things for emotional disturbance, and here's the qualifying statements. They can choose that specifically and put it into the recommendations based on their own unique area that they're working in. So I hear what you're saying. I just read something last night that the state of Texas changed finally some of the things that were long-standing needing to be changed to be more in compliance with the language that's used in IDA, like non-categorical types of handicapping conditions. We never had that in the state of Texas.
Yeah.
So it does change. You have to have the flexibility in the program to make change, obviously.
Right. In California, just the other day, we got information. We don't have to use the word emotional disturbance anymore, and we get to use emotional disability. It got signed by our governor. And so,
There
of
you
course,
go.
my first thought is, I got to go into my template and change that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I'm thrilled. Those are things you want the field to advance. It's just that it takes a while to go through legislative hearings and all. I used to do all those things. So trust me. I'm glad that we're making progress in that area.
Well, for school psychologists who are listening and they're like, how do I find out more about this? Where can they go to find out more? I know you have a great demo video as well that people can see exactly everything that you're talking about today as well.
Yeah, there's two things. I would have them go to the www.psychwriterpro.com. And when they go there, there is a link to a YouTube video that walks them through all the features of the program. And then on the main screen, there's a thing in the upper right-hand corner called Help Center. If you click on that, It's going to walk you through all the features of the program. It'll show you screen by screen and kind of give you an overview of things. We do have a 14-day free trial that you can sign up for. Once you are in the program, after you've signed up for the 14 free trial, you can ask for an individual demo from yours truly, and I will customize that to what your unique needs are because everybody's different. So we just have like a master calendar you go to and you sign up for a 30-minute slot. And we do those usually in the afternoons. So a lot of resources that are available. We will be getting more things on board over time, like some more demos of isolated type of features. Right now, we're just really busy getting the full infrastructure in place. So
That's wonderful. Well, we have a lot of podcast listeners that are new in their career. What advice would you give to someone just starting out in this amazing field?
cognitive flexibility. And two things, cognitive flexibility and being a commitment to being a lifelong learner. There's just no way. I used to wrestle with this. I go to sleep at night when I was the director of school psych graduate training program, either at the doctoral level or the specialist level. At the specialist level, you can't do everything in 60 graduate hours. You just can't. You try and teach someone to be a good problem solver, to be a generalist. You try and teach them how to administer things in a standardized fashion, but you can't teach them 137 tests. You have to teach them how to pick up a manual, learn to practice things and, administer things in appropriate fashion. But the field changes so rapidly. I've been fortunate to be around for a while. I guess that's the other thing is what goes around comes around. I've learned is that what was in vogue in the 1980s suddenly is being repackaged and called something else, but it's the same basic principles we were using in the 1980s or the 90s. But really, you have to read a lot. You have to go. That's why continuing education is so important. You have to be committed to learning new tools for your toolkit. And I think you can't walk out the door with a fixed battery in your hand every single time because not every single child is the same. You need to be able to know when to use a different type of test of cognitive ability versus, 3 or 4 other choices. Same things with achievement tests, same thing with personality tests. You have to have a lot of cognitive flexibility.
Love it. Well, this podcast is called the Prepared School Psych. When you think of the term prepared, what do you do to help yourself feel more prepared in your role?
I'm always learning. I'm committed to lifelong learning. Figuring out HIPAA was a challenge. That was something that was really interesting to go through. There are many tests that have crossed my path that people want that I've never seen in my practice. And so I would have to get access to manuals, technical manuals, read about things. I had never administered the Milan before. So figuring out how to, communicate the results of, an adult personality type of measure in a way that would make sense to parents and teachers, that's always a challenge because there's just 150, 137 tests is still the drop in the bucket. There's probably 500 tests out there that we have at our disposal, but some of them are so infrequently used and some of them are so dated that we're just not going to even touch those. And then I write books. I'm in the process of working with a group of authors on a neurodevelopmental disorders book. It'll be out soon in 2025. We've written 2 journal articles or 2 chapters in the last 2 months. And whenever you're writing something, you're doing literature reviews to find out what the current thinking is. So the model itself, the integrated school neuropsych CHC model, has evolved so much since the first edition was published back in 2007. So that's how I keep myself fresh, is staying on top of all the new assessment measures that are coming out and new techniques.
Gotta
Makes sense?
keep reading. Gotta keep reading.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I have found that for myself as well. Anytime I'm thinking of a new training I want to do or going and talking about this topic again, is there new information that has come out since then that is going to negate something I'm going to say, or what do I want to add to what I'm going to say? So always keeping up to date, which can be really difficult when we think about how busy everyone is in this field. I know for myself, I literally have to put the time on my calendar. Like, what book am I reading? How much time do I have? Because otherwise, it's easy to push that to the side.
But the common thread that runs through all of this is report writing. And if we can save hours writing reports and make them more user friendly, that's going to free up time to do other things, not to necessarily add to your caseload and see more children, but to actually free up some time to do some professional development type of activities. That would be great.
Awesome. Anything else that you want to share about your software program that we didn't get a chance to talk about?
Let's see. Not that I can think of. We do have some automatic learning curve graphs that are embedded in the software. I'm a big fan of learning curve graphs, not only to be able, like when you're doing a list of words, Tuli has many words as you remember over a number of trials. It's important to compare the child's number of correct answers across trials to normative data to see how it compares to kids their same age. And, there's different ways of interpreting that, but it's so nice to have that graphically presented. And so that's already integrated into the report writing software too.
I think that's incredible because I think it was through your program that I learned how to make all those graphs on Excel.
That's right.
And copy and paste and then cross my fingers that it didn't completely reformat my page.
Right.
So I think it's incredible where we're at today that we're able to integrate all of that amazing technology into our reports, because I found that for families, those are those types of things that make more sense to them.
Yes. A picture's worth 1,000 words. Yep.
Well, I think we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for being part of the podcast and sharing all of this wonderful information with all of the listeners.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
All right. Well, for everyone else, I hope you found today's episode of the Prepared School Psych podcast informative. Remember, your expertise plays a vital role in advocating for student achievement and growth. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review on your preferred podcast platform. Your feedback helps us reach more school psychologists like you. Thank you for listening and have a great day.
Thank you.
That concludes another episode of the Prepared School Psych podcast. And I hope today's discussion equipped you not just with knowledge, but also the confidence to take action. Remember, every conversation we have and every resource we share builds a bridge towards a more inclusive and empowering learning landscape for our students. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast for more insightful conversations and resources to support your journey. Share this podcast with colleagues. We would love it if you would also rate and review the podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Just a reminder, everyone, the information and advice provided in this podcast are for guidance purposes only, and all listeners are required to follow both federal and state law and their own school district guidelines and policies. Thank you.